Yeah, all right, here we go. We're gonna start this hearing, and as soon as I find the letter from the governor, I'm gonna read it. Here it is, here we go. Okay. I'm gonna start by reading a letter dated July 17, 2024. I am pleased to nominate John C. Fraser, what's the C for? John Charles Fraser, the position of Associate Justice of the Superior Court. I submit this nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution. We have Judge Iannella here. We have Council Iannella, Council Ferrara. He wants to be a judge. Council Jacob here, Council Devaney present at the moment. Council Duff is ill. That's why I am going to be chairing this hearing in her stead. Unfortunately, she's out. It would be a much smoother hearing with her, trust me. But in any event, would you be kind enough to introduce everybody to the councilors that you have here today?
New councilors. I brought with me my wife, Caroline Fraser. One of the witnesses is Sandy Cooner, who's run my office, basically my personal life for the past 10 years. And next to her is Judge Lynn Rooney.
Okay, great. We're going to call your first witness, which I believe is Judge Lynn Rooney, who I've appeared in front of probably 1,000 times. At least.
Good afternoon. I just want to thank the members of the Governor's Council for giving me this opportunity to speak. As John said, my name is Lynn Rooney. I was actually appointed to the District Court bench 17 years ago now, and I'm currently assigned to sit in the Superior Court. It is truly an honor for me to be here today to speak on behalf of John Fraser. I have known John for over 20 years now, and during that time, I've had the opportunity to see him in a number of venues, both inside and outside of the courtroom. He is an exceptional attorney. He is intelligent, extraordinarily well-versed in the law, and consistently well-prepared and organized. I had the privilege of being the first justice in the Lawrence District Court for 9 years, and John often appeared in front of me both as a bar advocate and as private counsel. On a regular day in Lawrence, it would not be unusual to have upwards of 30 people in custody waiting to be arraigned and a courtroom that was standing room only. As the judge, when I walked out into the bench, if I saw that John was one of the bar advocates for the day, I breathed a sigh of relief because I knew, because of his work ethic, that we would be able to get all the work done in a timely manner, and that every single person would have a full opportunity to be heard. John always would help the court in any way that was ever needed. Never got flustered, never became overwhelmed. He took the time he needed to speak with every client and then advocated for them vigorously in front of the court. There were many times when we would need a superior court qualified attorney to represent a client in the district court. And it wasn't just the judge for John Fraser. It were the clerks, the court officers, the probation officers. If we knew that John was somewhere in the courthouse, we knew that we could call him. He would come down and help us out, even though he wasn't assigned to do that day. His name always was at the top of the list of the person that you could rely on because of his kindness and his willingness to work with anyone. He was well known when he walked into the clerk's office as everything's going to be okay today because John's here. He has a stellar reputation for honesty and integrity among the bar and court personnel, and he is equally kind and respectful to every single person, no matter what position they may hold. If it's the court officer at the front door allowing people in, if it's the probation officer in the courtroom or the clerk at the counter, he's just John, and he does what needs to be done. Over the last 17 years, I have come to appreciate that the most important qualities that a judge can have are humility, a willingness to learn, and compassion for the people that come in front of you. And John Fraser has all of those attributes and then some. Over the past few years, I've become fortunate to get to know John on a more personal level, and I've gotten to know his family. I believe you can tell a lot about a person when you meet their children. And I can tell you that Julia, Jack, and Caroline are examples of what we want and need the next generation to be. Kind, caring humans who are dedicated to giving back to their community. And I know it is because of the example that John and Carol Ann have set for them through their lives. John Fraser will be a tremendous asset to the Superior Court because he cares about people, he cares about justice, and he treats everyone with dignity and respect. And I know that he will bring his wealth of experience in both civil and criminal law to the bench. And we, as a court, will be better for it. I cannot recommend him more highly to you, and I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you have about his candidacy.
Judge, you left out something very important that I don't see when I'm in a courtroom. Patience.
Agreed.
Most judges don't have patience with me, but but that's an important one too.
Great.
You left out something else, and that is that for the last year, you've been sitting in the Superior Court.
Yes,
And I think that's important to note too, because that's where he's going.
that's right.
Okay, any questions? Councilor Devaney?
How many years has it been?
I'm in my 18th year.
It's been 18 years, but I know it's been 18 years. I think Chris did too. Unbelievable. How many of your, well, extended family are still on the bench? A lot retired though, did they?
My father-in-law retired, but my husband, my brother-in-law,
Looks much more relaxed than I'm used to seeing him.
Bill is the first justice in Taunton, and then my other brother-in-law, Pat Hagan, is in the Superior Court.
Well, thank you. Your testimony means a lot. So, how many years have you known this nominee?
20.
So you have seen him in court.
Yes.
What has impressed you the most about him?
It's rare that you have someone who is always prepared and just willing to do anything. Usually you have people that seem a little flustered or running around or John is always prepared, ready to present his case. And the other quality that I think has always been remarkable is sometimes you rule against a person. He just took it in stride, never argued with the court, was never impolite, just he did his job that he needed to do when he always did it well.
I'll tell you, I really look to the witnesses and your experience in your relationship with this nominee, because you have seen him, you know, on a regular basis, and that means a lot to me. And I think that the councils are looking for the witnesses to, and I've said this many times, we have had people sitting in your chair, and I've said, how do you know this nominee? Have you seen him in court once? That doesn't do it for us. So your testimony means a lot.
Thank you. Councilor Ferraro?
Thank you. How many years have it been since we went to the Azores?
So I can tell you that because my youngest daughter, because I was pregnant at the time, just turned 23, so 22 years ago.
Oh, it was terrific. Terrific. I hear great things about you. Thank you for serving in the district court and in Superior Court. Great to see you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to call on someone who knows him even better. His office manager, Sandy Kuna, who referred to herself as his work wife.
Thank you all. It's an honor to speak on John's behalf. I've worked for Attorney Fraser since April of 2015, so it's almost 10 years now. Attorneys Carol Ann and John both hired me back then. It was a very welcoming environment. When Carol Ann left the office to pursue a new career path, I stayed on to work for Attorney Fraser. Words that I would like to use to define Attorney Fraser are respectful, polite, mild-mannered, honest, thoughtful, flexible, considerate, responsive to questions, and a mentor to me. And I mean all of that. I've had the opportunity to see Attorney Fraser interact with his clients, attorneys, suppliers, and staff. He's very well respected in the community and with his peers. His approach with clients is to treat everyone with respect, regardless of their case, situation, race, or gender. Confidentiality is of the utmost importance in our office. The professional relationship between John and his clients is especially important to him. He is always ready to do whatever he can do to meet the needs of the client and get the best results for them. He is very diligent in his job, doing research to achieve the best results. He's a devoted family man, always there for his family. I've seen that firsthand. His children will stop in to visit him, and he always welcomes them with a smile, and at times even treating them to lunch. You can tell he has a loving relationship with all of them. He was also their coach in youth sports, coaching soccer, hockey, and softball when his children were younger. In my opinion, a very honorable man, and I enjoyed working for him and with him all these years.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Do they pay you well to be the super family?
I did this on.
Councilor Devaney.
I'm sorry.
We raise our hands to recognize the chair.
Councilor Devaney.
I've heard all about you already, and
You have?
Yes. I met with him for hours and he talked about you and he said the same attributes that you felt about him, about you.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna tell you, due respect to the judge, you are very important because you have seen his ups and downs and when he's under stress or whatever. So, and you see him probably more often than his wife, right? So I told him that. I said, so I can't wait to meet her. So tell me what you have said it all, but what do you observe a day to day that, in your relationship with him? And I'm sure in 9 years you've worked.
A little over 9 years.
Yeah. And I'm sure in those times there've been family issues or family tragedies or whatever, and how he has reached out to you. So tell us about the personal of this nominee.
He is very mild-mannered and considerate, very, very thoughtful. He goes above and beyond what some bosses would do. I'm just truly grateful for his friendship all these years, even as a boss. He's been outstanding.
Yeah, great. So you don't want to see him go, but you wanted to get this position, right?
Absolutely. I'm so honored to be able to speak here on his.
Well, we're honored to have you, and thank you. Your testimony means a lot to us, believe me. Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Councilor Ferrara.
I'm going to withdraw the last question and instruct the witness not to answer. Has he ever been held in contempt?
Sorry?
Has he ever been held in contempt of court? You have to really push hard to be held in contempt. Wouldn't a lawyer have to really have to push hard to be held in contempt?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. All right, just making sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that'll conclude the witnesses in favor. Now we need the witnesses in opposition. Can somebody check security? There was a long line back down there. All right. I'm going to close that portion of the hearing. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Councilor. I first take the opportunity to thank Governor Healy and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll for my nomination. I'd like to thank Governor's Chief of Legal Counsel, Paige Scott Reed, and Deputy Legal Counsel, Derek Hesselheim, for their time and assistance. I'd like to thank the members of the JNC for their time and consideration through this process. I'd like to thank Valerie McCarthy and her staff at Governor's Council. I'd like to also thank each of you councilors for taking the time to speak or meet with me. I enjoyed our conversations, and I wish Councilor Duff speedy recovery, and sorry she's not here. I'd like to thank my witnesses, Judge Rooney and Sandy Kuna, for their time and kind words. I'd like to thank my family, particularly my wife, Carol Ann, for their support and encouragement during this process. I find myself today in an unfamiliar position. Used to being an advocate, speaking on behalf of a client and telling their story. Frankly, I'm not comfortable talking about myself, but I will do my best. I will start, if you permit me, where everything in my life begins and ends, and that's with my family. My wife and I have 3 children. They're in their 20s. Unfortunately, they aren't able to be here because one's out of state and they have work and other commitments, but I would like to talk about them because they're a big part and we're very proud of them. Our oldest is Julia. Julia's 27. This past May, she graduated from the Mass General Hospital Institute of Health Professions with a master's in nursing. She's going to be a nurse practitioner. She's working and studying for her boards. While attending full-time graduate program, she worked 24 hours a week at Brigham Women's Hospital on a cancer floor, taking care of patients. My wife and I all often marvel how she does it, how she goes to work with a smile on her disposition. But we know, like all healthcare workers, she's a special person and she has truly found her calling. Our son Jack is 25. He graduated from Tufts 3 years ago with a degree in computer science and community health. He's out in California, right? Oh, he's actually in Colorado. He was in California. He tells us he's slowly moving back east and plans to come home. He's working on a startup there. He's developing a medical device with AI, artificial intelligence, and I got to be candid. He's explained it to me 3 times. I have no idea what he's talking about. Right over the head. But he knows what he's doing. We have a lot of faith. He's also working in a medical center, getting clinical hours. He plans to attend med school, and we're hopeful it's back here because we miss him. Our youngest, Caroline, graduated from Union College just over a month ago. It was an exciting day for her. It was an equally exciting day for my wife and I because we graduated from paying tuitions. So it was a great time for everyone. She has a degree in biomedical engineering. She's actually in the job search process. She had an interview today. So we trust that some smart employer will hire her and we'll get a very smart and hardworking young engineer. My wife, the Honorable Caroline Fraser, is the heart and soul of our family. She's a wonderful mother and partner. She's a dedicated public servant who goes to work every day and does her very best to administer justice. I see how much time and effort she puts into her job and how important it is to her to get it right. I know if I'm confirmed, she will be a wonderful resource for me. But I can tell you and trust me that she will have no problem giving me what she will say is constructive criticism when she thinks I get something wrong. And typically she'll probably be right. I'm very fortunate and I can't think of anyone who has a better support system than my family. Now, as I went through the nomination process, I was asked numerous times, what are the qualities that I think are important in a judge? And I think there are many qualities. Understanding of the law, courtroom experience. But one thing that always stood out to me and most important was temperament. The judges that I've admired most over the years of practice are the judges who run the courtroom with dignity and respect. And that's respect for everyone in the courtroom, including court staff, attorneys, defendants, and parties appearing before them in civil matters. Now, I was born and raised in Reading, Mass. I'm the youngest of 3. I have an older sister and brother. My parents were part of what is referred to as the greatest generation. My mother grew up in Brockton. Her father worked in the shoe factory, and her mother was an administrative assistant. She was a good student, worked hard, and became a nurse. He went on to get a bachelor's degree from Regis College and ultimately got a master's degree from Boston University in hospital administration. My father grew up in Stoneham. He was the eldest of 7. When he turned 18 in February 1943, he left Stoneham High halfway through his senior year and enlisted in the Army. He served his country through the balance of World War II. After service, he took advantage of the GI Bill and enrolled in college at what was known at the time as Mass Aggie. We all know it as the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. After he graduated, he began a career in business. The most important thing to my parents was family. We had my mother with us until she was 96. She got to meet and spend a lot of time with her 9 grandchildren. Unfortunately, I lost my father when he was 71 to cancer. He passed a few weeks after our oldest was born, Julia. I think about him often, and I always remember he was such a kind person. He treated everyone with dignity and respect. He was unfailingly polite. I never heard him say a bad thing about anyone. He was a good listener. He was very patient, and he was also quite witty. Never told my sister, brother, or me how we should act or how we should treat people. He just showed us by the way he went about his life every day. I've tried to emulate him as best I can. Not as good as he was, but I'm working on it. I've had the privilege to practice law in the Commonwealth for over 30 years. I started in a small litigation practice in Cambridge, and eventually Caroline and I opened Fraser Law Office in 2001. Now, my clients are typically individuals or small businesses that need representation for civil or criminal matters. Usually you hear from an existing client or you meet a new client when something goes wrong. Someone got arrested, there was an accident, or they didn't have a problem that needs fixing. I've enjoyed it, and it's been a privilege to help my clients, to serve them, and hopefully have a positive impact on them. Through our efforts, Fraser Law Office has been a successful practice. Despite being very busy with private work, since 2001, I've always accepted court appointments for individuals who are facing criminal charges and can't afford their own counsel. And I can tell you without reservation that that work has been the most rewarding. Now, typically when you get a court-appointed case, you get a copy of the criminal complaint, the police report, and your client's criminal record. So you start off by basically reading the lowlights of their lives. I learned very on how important it was to sit with a client, speak with them, meet with them, get their background, their history, any issues they have, mental health or substance use disorders. I would meet with their client, with their family, speak with friends. I wanted to get the whole picture. And I did that because I knew the more information I got, the more information I could give to a judge, and the more likely I was to get a favorable disposition for my client. I've seen over the past 30 years the impact that a judge has on the parties that appear before them. I want to become a judge because I have the experience and I think the temperament to be an effective one. If I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed by this body, I will do my best every day to treat everyone who comes before me with dignity and respect, because that's what everyone's deserve. I will also seek as much information as possible about the defendant or the parties before me in a civil matter, so I can make decisions that are fair and just. Thank you again for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I know Councilor Iannella had an issue this afternoon. We had to be somewhere, so I'm going to call you out of order.
Thank you. And make it easy, we got a lengthy conversation on the telephone. I don't have any questions, or maybe one, and there's some other judges here, so. Honestly, I wasn't gonna ask anybody. And this is a question that I do ask a lot of judges, and they all give me the same answer. But in reality, it's not always what really happens, because I hear from, I usually hear from Bob Juventel. These are two individuals who they're busy. They have a live criminal practice. So they're in this court, that court. I don't go to court. I don't other than one case. Which I've been told about 10 times, and I haven't done a case in years. Continuous. So I don't understand. I hear from other people too, other lawyers. This is the biggest beef. Why is it so hard to grant a continuance? I don't understand it. You don't get fired. You don't get fired if you don't grant a continuance. But I hear these stories from Kennedy. I hear them from Juvenile. Can you believe it? You know, why? I don't get it. You know, so I guess the question is, it's easy. If it's agreed upon, those are the easy ones. I'm talking about, it's the third time, okay? And let's even say an order of no further continuance by the prior judge. What are you gonna do if somebody says, yeah, they want a continuance? You know, you have to say, well, that's a valid reason. That's what I hear from everyone. Well, the person asking the continuance, he or she thinks it's a valid reason. What's your general sense in granting continuances? I know it seems really easy, and everyone here says, yeah, I'm in favor of continuances. And I hear from this one and that one and this one. So your thoughts?
Well, I'd be inclined to accommodate counsel. I've been working in small practice. I know the pressures of having to be in 2 or 3 courts someday, running around trying to make a living, run the office. So I take counsel at their word. If they need a continuance, I assume there's a valid reason. I would typically be inclined to grant it.
What would be a bad reason for continuance? Because I can't take anything. Realistic bad reason.
I can't think of any off the top of my head.
So I'm not going to hear stories from a Judge Fraser. Yeah, granted, it was
This Judge Fraser, just so we're clear.
Oh, yeah, what's fun, and he wouldn't give me a continuance. Can you believe this? Oh, what, I hear this too. I'm going on vacation, and I'm busy as hell, and the judge didn't grant the continuance, and now he wants me to go on Friday, 3 days before my vacation, to argue the motion for continuance. I go, you kidding me? Who's that? Tell me. You're gonna make people throw up? Again, this is all continuances that are not agreed upon. It'd be really easy if they're agreed upon.
I would typically not. I would have an issue ruling on the papers, and I understand the pressures of practicing law, so I'm not going to deny someone a vacation.
We had someone here, I don't know if you heard, it wasn't really, it was a female judge, it was a while ago too, I'm saying, it wasn't you. She said, yeah, my husband I said to her, I said, what happens if your husband surprised you? Wedding anniversary, we're taking you away 4 or 5 days to Bermuda. Well, you know what? He should have known my schedule, and I go, you're kidding me, right? So you don't get these stories, it's crazy. And the last, it's not a question, but I've been a lawyer a few years. Well, when I first started out, I did court appointed for. I was in every court, okay? I was in Roxbury, I was in Dorchester, I'm eating my sandwich to go here. Then I had this judge, it's a funny story, I won't tell you the judge's name. But then I went to the jury session, the BMC, back in those. Mr. Ryan, no, this court's not. Jeez, I'm sorry. I was in Roxbury, or I was in 2 other courts. You know, did you call? I couldn't get through to anyone. You know what? There's a lot of money back then. $100 court costs in the dark. In the dark. $10 So I don't have $100. So I had to leave the BMC, go to my friends who was at City Hall, get $100, and $100 in every pocket. Went back, gave $100, and the funny part about the story, I was a lawyer at the time, I wasn't on the council. You can only imagine what happened. A few years later, I ran for governor's council, I was fortunate to win. And then that judge in the BMC was nominated to the Superior Court, and I happened to be the counselor, because he was assigned to it, because it was in my district. I've never seen anyone so apologetic. I said, don't worry about it, but just be careful the next time. I didn't give him a hard time. He obviously went through. But those are the key one story, so I hope we're not going to hear any from you. What is it? But yeah, no, you're a great candidate. You have the temperament, the demeanor, and when your name comes before us, I'll be more than happy to support you.
Council.
So I just want to point 2 things out. None of the judges here have given me a hard time about continuances. I just want to. I may get an eye roll, a little pushback, but I get them. And number 2, some of us still think $100 is a lot of money.
I do so.
Councilor DePaulo.
Counselor, when we were at break, I was talking with Counselor Ferreira, and he has a commitment later in the afternoon.
Councilor, I actually have no questions. You were kind enough to drive down to meet me yesterday and spent a lot of time with me. I think you're gonna make an awesome judge. You have a great reputation, you have a great resume. I look forward to voting for you next week.
Thank you very much.
Councilor DePaulo.
Thank you, Counselor. Good afternoon. I'm sorry to be difficult to get a hold of in the last few weeks, but nonetheless, we can talk a little today and maybe talk a little after the hearing. So you've done a lot of court-appointed work, and in your application, you talked about, among many other things, the way some defendants have benefited from probation that includes evaluations and treatment, is how you put it.
Correct.
Could you talk a little more about what your experience with probation and conditions of release are, and how you see it, how you see areas where maybe the system would be better served in some cases?
Absolutely. So I'm a big believer, a lot of the people that I end up representing as appointed counsel or personally, usually they find themselves in those situations, could be substance use disorder or mental health. So I would, typically, as I said, I would try to get them evaluated, and I would make that the evaluation and treatment as part of a request if we're trying to resolve the case. And I also know probation and both the district court and the superior court, they have a lot of resources, a lot of programs, and they're great at getting people evaluated, following up on them. So I think for the most part, I'm a big fan of the probation department in the superior court. They do a real good job. I think treatment, evaluation, treatment, instead of a longer period of incarceration or any incarceration, is always something to consider given a person's background and what the issue is. So have been as an attorney, I'm a big supporter of treatment, and I think as a judge, it would also be something I would be supportive of.
And so it sounds like you'd be supportive of kind of an individualized approach to the conditions.
I think everyone who comes before you is an individual, so I'd want to know what what has going on in their life, what's the issues, what the evaluation is, if there was one, and what is the best fit for them to move them forward.
Okay. And something I ask every candidate about, because it's personal to me is the way the justice system is dealing with brain science right now and the way it's impacting things. So are you familiar with the Mattis decision or Diachenko or?
I'm familiar with Mattis, yes.
So what do you perceive the consequence? Do you perceive there to be consequences beyond the life without parole for 21 and under that will emerge from the Mattis decision?
I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure I understand the question. I'm sorry.
So in the Mattis decision, the Supreme Judicial Court had a narrowly tailored decision regarding specifically life without parole for those certain age defendants, right?
Yes.
And they used the terminology emerging adults, yet they also noted, I think a couple times, that emerging adults in the science that they were reviewing and the findings of fact that came from Superior Court, that emerging adults would really extend to age 25 in other situations. And as I read the decision, there's a lot of room left in there for applying the science to other situations beyond life without parole for someone 21 and under. I'm wondering, do you see consequences potentially in the future that would emerge from that line of reasoning?
Yeah, I think when you read Mattis clearly, the science goes up to 25 as an emergent adult in the development of the brain and then aging out of criminal activity and all those findings. So I think it's something that you're going to see argued more, and I expect that in certain cases, if you have someone in that 21 to 25 year range, I anticipate that if they're, depending on the sentence, that you will see an attack on that or an argument that Mattis should be extended to individuals up to 25.
And that in general, potentially, like certain sentencing might be inapplicable, because Mattis is specifically on life without parole, but.
Well, I think the way I've read it, and I've used it a few times, when you're dealing with someone who is in that 18 to 25 range, I think it's a factor, like any factor, that a judge should take into consideration regarding their age, history, and everything you can know about them.
So I guess to get to your kind of philosophical, intellectual approach, what do you see brain development? How do you see it impacting maybe the defendants you've worked with?
Well, I think it's something based on the decision. Again, I think it's one of the factors that you should take into the age of the defendant. And I think the science and obviously the SJC recognizes that it's pretty compelling with respect to the brain development, the impulse control, peer pressure, taking risks, all those factors. And I would absolutely take it into consideration.
Do you have any experience with employment law?
Very little.
One thing that I see happening in employment law sometimes is really what I think under Massachusetts law would be considered unconscionable mandatory arbitration clauses in some employment contracts. And so we have situations that come up where litigants are being, strike that. The arbitration clauses are doing things such as creating barriers to the person actually achieving a just outcome. In some cases, things happening like the employer sending them to counsel and then the employer asserting in court that there's privileged communication that they do not have to reveal about the investigation they conducted. There's an imbalance of information. There's some instances where employees are left without the protection of Massachusetts law, let's say PMFL or whatever it may be. And I'm just wondering, as you approach these things, well, I guess you don't have experience in the area, but I would ask you to be mindful, I guess, of the fact that folks in Massachusetts are being mistreated under Massachusetts law and are being denied any access to justice. And in some cases, not all, I would argue, and many in my firm have, that it rises to the level of unconscionable under Massachusetts law. Final thing that my constituents are concerned about, so maybe someone else will ask you, and I don't mean to put you on the hot spot about a hot issue, but in very rare circumstances, one of which I witnessed and was a part of, a minor will come to Superior Court because they're seeking an abortion and they haven't had, for whatever reason, they haven't